One day, they're texting you good morning. The next day, silence. Complete silence. You check your phone. Nothing. You send a message. No response. You call. It goes straight to their carefully crafted voicemail message, the one they recorded months ago when things were still good between you. And that's when it hits you, they're gone. Not physically gone. They're still living their life, posting on social media, showing up to work, existing in the world. But gone from your life. Without a word. Without an explanation. Without even the basic human decency of saying, I'm done. Real talk. That's one of the most brutal forms of emotional violence a person can experience. And if you've been through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That hollow feeling in your chest. That constant replay of the last conversation you had, searching for clues you missed. That voice in your head asking the same question over and over, what did I do wrong? Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of silent abandonment. Why some people disappear without explanation. What's happening in their mind when they make that choice? And most importantly, what it does to yours. Because understanding the darkness in human behavior, that's the first step to protecting yourself from it. Let's start with that moment. The moment you realize they're not coming back. It's not always obvious at first. Maybe they've been distant for a while. Maybe they told you they needed space, or they were going through something. And you believed them because you wanted to. Because the alternative, that they were already halfway out the door, was too painful to consider. But then days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And that space they needed. It becomes an entire universe between you. Here's what messes with your head the most, they didn't give you a chance to prepare. There was no conversation. No fight. No closure. They just opted out. Like you were a subscription they forgot to cancel until one day they finally got around to it. And the worst part? You're left holding all this unspoken everything. All the things you would have said if you'd known that last conversation was actually the last conversation. All the questions that will never get answered. All the emotions that have nowhere to go except inward, where they slowly poison you from the inside out. Listen, this part hits hard, because your brain isn't wired to handle this kind of ambiguity. Human beings need narrative closure. We need beginnings, middles, and ends. We need to understand cause and effect. They left because. Needs to have an answer. But with silent abandonment, there is no because. There's just gone. So let's get into their head. Not to excuse them, but to understand them. Because understanding is how you stop taking this personally. The person who leaves without a word isn't doing it because you're worthless. They're doing it because they are. Or at least, that's how they feel deep down. And that's a truth they can't face. See, people who ghost, who vanish, who practice silent abandonment, they share a common psychological pattern, emotional avoidance at a pathological level. These are people who never learned how to sit with uncomfortable emotions. Conflict. They run. Difficult conversations. They disappear. Accountability. They'd rather delete their entire existence from your life than face it. Deep down, you know this, their silence isn't about your worth. It's about their inability to handle emotional complexity. But your trauma brain doesn't care about that logic, does it? It just knows you got left behind. Here's the dark psychology part, for them, disappearing feels like the kindest option. I know that sounds insane, but hear me out. In their mind, if they just fade away quietly, you'll eventually move on. No messy conversations. No tears. No having to witness the pain they caused. They tell themselves they're protecting you from a difficult conversation when really, they're protecting themselves from guilt. This is what psychologists call conflict avoidance attachment style, taken to its extreme. These people would rather blow up an entire relationship than sit in 15 minutes of discomfort. And here's where it gets darker, they're not thinking about you. At all. I know that's brutal to hear. You're over here replaying every moment, analyzing every text, wondering what you could have done differently. And they're living their life. Maybe they feel a twinge of guilt when something reminds them of you. Maybe they don't. But they're not losing sleep. Because people who can abandon others without a word have mastered the art of emotional compartmentalization. They've locked you in a mental box labeled, dealt with, and moved on. This is the part where your healing brain needs to understand something crucial. Their capacity for emotional detachment says everything about their internal landscape and nothing about your value. People with healthy attachment patterns don't vanish. They communicate. They feel uncomfortable emotions and sit with them anyway. They respect others enough to be honest, even when honesty is hard. The fact that they left silently. That's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of their emotional development being stuck somewhere around age 7, when hiding under a blanket made problems disappear. But let's go even deeper into the darkness. Some people don't leave because they're scared of conflict. They leave because they enjoy the power of it. Yes, you heard that right. For certain personality types, particularly those with narcissistic or antisocial traits, silent abandonment is a power move. It's the ultimate control. Think about it, by disappearing without explanation, they keep you in a state of perpetual confusion. You're stuck thinking about them, wondering about them, trying to figure out what happened. Meanwhile, they've moved on, probably to someone new. And if you ever dare to reach out asking for answers, they get to ignore you again. They get to watch you beg for scraps of closure they'll never give you. Because your pain. It feeds something dark in them. This is the psychology of the discard phase in narcissistic relationships. You're not gradually phased out, you're abruptly erased. Because to them, you were never really a person. You were a supply. And when the supply runs out or they find a better source, you get discarded like an empty container. Low-key, this is the darkest form of silent abandonment, because it's intentional. It's calculated. It's designed to maximize your pain while minimizing their effort. Now let's talk about what this does to you. Because that's what really matters, isn't it? Silent abandonment doesn't just hurt, it rewires your brain. When someone disappears from your life without explanation, your attachment system goes into crisis mode. Attachment theory tells us that humans are wired to seek proximity, especially from people we're bonded to. When that person suddenly becomes unreachable, your brain essentially experiences a malfunction. It's like having a program running in the background of your mind that keeps trying to connect to a server that no longer exists. Error. 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 But the program won't shut down. It just keeps trying. This is why you can't stop thinking about them. It's not weakness, it's neuroscience. Your brain is literally trying to solve an impossible equation. This person was important to me plus this person is gone plus I don't know why equals system error. And here's the really messed up part, your brain will create its own answers when reality won't provide them. This is called cognitive closure need, and it's why you start making up stories about what happened. Maybe they're scared of intimacy. Maybe I was too much. Maybe they're dealing with something they can't tell me about. Maybe they'll come back once they heal. You create narratives to fill the void of not knowing. And 9 times out of 10, those narratives blame you. Because blaming yourself feels more controllable than accepting that some people are just emotionally bankrupt. But the damage goes deeper than obsessive thoughts. Silent abandonment creates what psychologists call complex trauma. It's not a single event, it's an ongoing experience of uncertainty, self-doubt, and invalidation. Every day they don't respond is another day your worth gets questioned. Every social media post you see of them living their life is another reminder that they're fine while you're falling apart. Every mutual friend who doesn't bring them up becomes a potential enemy who chose sides without you knowing there was a war. This kind of abandonment doesn't just hurt your feelings, it damages your sense of reality. You start questioning everything. Was any of it real? Did they ever actually care? Was I that easy to forget? And here's where the psychological warfare really kicks in. You start pre-abandoning future people before they can abandon you. This is the core wound. This is what silent abandonment plants in your psyche, the belief that people will leave, so you might as well protect yourself by either A. Never getting close to anyone again. B. Constantly monitoring for signs of abandonment. C. Becoming the person who leaves first. Real talk. Most people who've been silently abandoned end up doing all three at different times. You build walls, but then you obsessively check for cracks. You push people away, then panic when they actually go. You repeat the pattern because it's the only pattern you know. And let's talk about the body. Because trauma isn't just mental, it's physical. When someone disappears from your life, especially someone you were attached to, your body experiences it as a threat to survival. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between physical abandonment and emotional abandonment. To your primitive brain, being alone equals being vulnerable to predators equals death. So your body stays in a state of hyperarousal. You're constantly on edge, scanning for threats, unable to fully relax. Your cortisol levels spike. Your sleep suffers. Your appetite either disappears or becomes an attempt to fill the void. Some people describe feeling physically sick after being abandoned. Nausea, chest tightness, difficulty breathing, these aren't just metaphors for heartbreak. They're actual somatic responses to attachment trauma. Your body is grieving a loss your mind can't fully process. And because there's no closure, no funeral, no definitive end, your body stays stuck in that grief response indefinitely. This is why silent abandonment is so damaging. It's not just an ending, it's an endless non-ending. A suspended animation of pain that your nervous system can't complete. Okay, so you understand why they left. You understand what it's doing to you. But here's the question that haunts you at 3 a.m. Why can't you just move on? It's been months. Maybe years. You know, intellectually, that they're not coming back. You know they weren't good for you. You know you deserve better. So why does your brain keep returning to them like a moth to a flame that already burned it? The answer is actually kind of dark, and it has to do with how your brain processes intermittent reinforcement. See, if someone is consistently bad to you, your brain learns to avoid them. But if someone is sometimes good and sometimes bad, if they give you moments of connection mixed with periods of absence, your brain gets addicted to the uncertainty. It's the same psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You don't know when the next win is coming, so your brain stays in a state of anticipation, releasing dopamine not when you win, but when you're waiting to see if you'll win. With silent abandonment, your brain is stuck in permanent waiting mode. Maybe they'll reach out today. Maybe they'll explain. Maybe they'll apologize. Maybe there's still a chance. And every time you check your phone and there's nothing, your brain doesn't give up. It doubles down. Check again. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's coming. This is called extinction burst in behavioral psychology. When a reward stops coming, you actually increase the behavior trying to get it back before you finally give up. Except with human attachment, some people never fully reach the give up stage. But there's another reason your brain won't let go, and this one's even darker. Deep down, part of you believes that if you just figure out what went wrong, you can fix it. If you just understand why they left, you can become the version of yourself they'd stay for. This is the bargaining stage of grief stretched into infinity. You're negotiating with a ghost, trying to trade parts of yourself for their return. If I were less needy. If I were more independent. If I were funnier, prettier, more successful. If I just hadn't said that one thing. You're not holding on to them, you're holding on to the possibility of redemption. The fantasy that their silence isn't final. That somewhere in the multiverse, there's a version of this story where they come back and everything makes sense. But listen, this is the truth your healing self needs. There is no version of you that would have made them stay. Because their leaving wasn't about who you are. It was about who they aren't. People with the capacity for genuine connection don't abandon others silently. People with emotional maturity communicate. People who value you treat you with basic human decency. Their silence isn't a puzzle for you to solve. It's a statement about their character that has nothing to do with yours. And here's the really painful truth: sometimes your brain won't let go because the abandonment confirms something you already believed about yourself. Maybe you grew up with a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Maybe you've been left before. Maybe somewhere deep in your subconscious, you've always believed you were the kind of person people leave. And then this person proved it. They left without a word, and that became evidence for a core belief you've carried your whole life: I'm not worth staying for. This is called confirmation bias, and it's why abandonment trauma cuts so deep for some people and not others. It's not that it doesn't hurt everyone, it's that for some, it's not just one person leaving. It's every person who ever left, all at once, confirming the worst thing you've ever thought about yourself. Your brain can't let go because letting go means accepting that belief as truth. And accepting it feels like dying. So instead, you hold on. You ruminate. You replay. You analyze. Because staying stuck in the question feels safer than accepting the answer. They left because they could, and your worth was never the variable in that equation. Let's talk about closure. Because I know what you're waiting for. You're waiting for them to come back and explain. Apologize. Give you that final conversation that makes it all make sense. Here's what nobody tells you: closure is a myth. I know that's not what you want to hear. You want me to tell you that if you just wait long enough, they'll feel guilty and reach out. That they'll finally give you the answers you deserve. That there will be a moment of resolution where everything clicks into place and you can finally move on. But real talk. That moment isn't coming. And even if it did, it wouldn't give you what you think it would. Let me explain why. Imagine they did come back. Imagine they sent you a message tomorrow explaining everything. I left because I was scared. I wasn't ready. I had my own issues. It wasn't about you. Would that actually fix anything? Would it erase the months or years of pain? Would it restore your trust? Would it make the abandonment hurt less? No. It would just give your pain a different narrative. You'd still be hurt. You'd still have trust issues. You'd still carry the wound. The only difference is you'd have a story to tell about why it happened, but the happening still happened. Closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you give yourself. And I know that sounds like some self-help bullshit, but stay with me because this is actually based in psychological research. Studies on grief and loss show that people who wait for external validation of their pain actually take longer to heal than people who learn to validate themselves. Because closure isn't about knowing why. It's about accepting that you'll never know why, and deciding that you're still worthy of peace anyway. Here's the dark truth about needing closure: it keeps you emotionally tethered to someone who's already cut the rope. Every day you wait for an explanation is a day they still have power over you. Every time you check to see if they've reached out is a moment your healing gets paused. Every scenario you imagine where they finally apologize is energy you're giving to someone who took your energy and left. They moved on. Without closure. Without looking back. And as brutal as that is, it's also instructive. If they can move on without closure, so can you. You don't need their permission to heal. You don't need their explanation to know your truth. You don't need their apology to forgive yourself for caring about someone who didn't deserve it. Closure is a choice to stop waiting. That's all it is. It's the moment you decide that not knowing is better than staying stuck. That peace is more important than answers. That your future matters more than their past. And here's what happens when you make that choice: you realize that you were never actually waiting for them to give you closure. You were waiting for permission to let go of the fantasy that they'd come back and make it all okay. But they're not coming back. And even if they did, they're not capable of making it okay because people who abandon others without a word aren't capable of the emotional depth required to heal the wounds they create. So you give yourself permission. You close the door they left open. You write your own ending to a story they refuse to finish. And listen, I'm not saying this is easy. Giving yourself closure is one of the hardest psychological tasks a human can undertake. Because it requires you to sit with ambiguity. To accept that some questions don't have answers. To make peace with incompleteness. Your brain hates this. Your heart hates this. Every part of you that still hopes will fight against this. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is spending years of your life waiting for someone who isn't thinking about you to decide you're worth thinking about. And that's not hope, that's self-abandonment. The person who abandoned you taught you to abandon yourself. They showed you that your need for answers, for respect, for basic human decency doesn't matter. And when you sit around waiting for closure from them, you're agreeing with them. You're saying, you're right. My needs don't matter. I'll just wait here until you decide I deserve an explanation. No. You deserve more than that. You deserve more than silence. You deserve communication, honesty, respect. But since they couldn't give you those things, the least you can do is give them to yourself. Tell yourself the truth, they left because they were emotionally incapable of staying. Close the loop yourself. Mourn what you lost, but stop waiting for them to validate that loss. Your grief is real whether they acknowledge it or not. Your pain is valid whether they apologize or not. Your worth is intact whether they come back or not. That's closure. Not an explanation from them, but a decision from you. Okay, so how do you actually heal from something that has no resolution? How do you move forward when a chapter of your life just stopped mid-sentence? First, you need to understand that healing from abandonment isn't linear. You're not going to wake up one day and be over it. Some days you'll feel strong. Some days you'll backslide into wondering if they're thinking about you. That's normal. That's human. Don't shame yourself for it. But here are the psychological strategies that actually work. 1. Stop checking on them. I know you do it. Social media stalking, asking mutual friends, driving by places you know they might be. Stop. Every time you check on them, you're reopening the wound. You're keeping them present in your life when they chose to be absent. Block if you need to. Mute if blocking feels too dramatic. But create distance. Not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough to stop drinking poison. 2. Redirect the obsession. Your brain wants to think about them because thinking feels like doing something. It feels productive. But it's not. It's just rumination disguised as analysis. Every time you catch yourself spiraling into thoughts about them, redirect. Physically. I'm thinking about them again. That's normal. But I'm choosing to think about something else instead. It won't work immediately. Your brain will fight you. But over time, you're literally rewiring neural pathways. You're teaching your brain that they're not the default thought pattern anymore. 3. Grieve what you lost, not what you imagined. This is huge. Most of the pain from abandonment comes from mourning a future that was never real. You're grieving the potential, the possibility, the fantasy of what could have been. But here's the truth, if they were capable of abandoning you silently, they were never capable of the future you imagined. That future was always an illusion. Grieve the real loss, the companionship you had, the moments that were good, the connection you felt. But let go of the fantasy. It was never going to happen with someone who handles emotions by disappearing. 4. Reclaim your narrative. They wrote you out of their story without your consent. So write your own story where you're the main character, not a discarded side plot. What did this experience teach you? About boundaries? About red flags? About your own resilience? You're not the person you were before this happened. You're someone who survived emotional violence and is still here. That's not nothing. That's character development. Dark character development, sure, but development nonetheless. 5. Build secure attachment with yourself. The abandonment happened because they had an unhealthy relationship with themselves, which meant they could never have a healthy relationship with you. Don't repeat that pattern by abandoning yourself. Show up for yourself. Keep promises you make to yourself. Validate your own emotions. Be the consistent presence in your life that they weren't. This is how you heal attachment trauma, by providing for yourself what they couldn't. You become your own secure base. 6. Feel everything, but don't live there. You're allowed to be angry, hurt, confused, devastated. Don't suppress that. Suppressed emotions don't disappear, they just come out sideways in ways that hurt you more. But feeling your feelings and drowning in them are different things. Set boundaries even with your own grief. I'm going to let myself feel this for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to do something that grounds me. Honor the pain, but don't let it become your identity. You're not the person who got abandoned. You're a person who experienced abandonment and is choosing to heal from it. 7. Understand that forgiveness is for you, not them. People always say, forgive and move on, like it's simple. It's not. And you don't owe them forgiveness. But here's what you do owe yourself: freedom from the prison of resentment. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. It doesn't hurt them, they're not even thinking about you. It only hurts you. Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you're no longer willing to carry the weight of what they did. You're setting down the burden, not because they deserve your forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. 8. Accept that you'll never fully get over it. This might sound depressing, but it's actually freeing. You don't need to completely get over it to be okay. You don't need to reach some magical state where it never hurts anymore. You just need to integrate it. To make it part of your story without letting it be the whole story. To acknowledge, that happened, and it changed me, without letting it define you. Some days you'll remember and it won't hurt at all. Some days, years later, something will remind you and the pain will be fresh. Both are okay. That's not regression, that's being human. The goal isn't to forget. The goal is to remember without falling apart. 9. Find meaning, not closure. Since closure from them isn't coming, find meaning instead. What did this experience teach you about what you will and won't accept in relationships? About your own strength? About the kind of person you want to become? Terrible experiences can be transformative if you let them. Not because the experience was good, but because your response to it can be. You can emerge from this with more compassion, stronger boundaries, deeper self-awareness. You can use the darkness they left behind to illuminate what you actually need and deserve. That's not silver lining bullshit, that's dark alchemy. Turning poison into medicine. Using pain as information rather than letting it be destruction. 10. Let yourself be angry. I saved this for last because it's the one people skip. Everyone wants you to be zen, to rise above, to be the bigger person. And eventually, maybe you will be. But first, be furious. Be absolutely enraged that someone treated you like you were disposable. Like your feelings didn't matter. Like basic human decency was too much effort. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to hate what they did. You're allowed to think they're a coward, emotionally stunted, pathologically selfish. Because they were. Don't spiritually bypass your anger. Don't perform forgiveness before you felt your rage. Anger is information, it tells you a boundary was violated. And in the case of silent abandonment, a fundamental boundary of human respect was demolished. Feel that anger. Write letters you'll never send. Scream into pillows. Rage to your therapist. Let the fire burn. Because once you've felt it fully, it will burn itself out. And what's left is clarity. Strength. A bone-deep knowing that you will never accept treatment like that again. Here's the thing about abandonment trauma: if you don't heal it, you repeat it. Not because you're stupid or weak, but because unhealed trauma becomes a template. Your brain, trying to protect you, will either A. Make you terrified of abandonment, so you cling to people who are already halfway out the door. B. Make you the abandoner, so you leave before you can be left. C. Make you attracted to emotionally unavailable people because that's the familiar pattern. This is called repetition compulsion, your psyche's attempt to master an unresolved trauma by recreating it. Your unconscious mind thinks, maybe if I go through this again, but differently this time, I can fix the original wound. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. You just re-traumatize yourself. So how do you break the cycle? First, recognize your pattern. Do you pursue people who are clearly emotionally unavailable? Do you ignore red flags because you're hoping this time will be different? Do you stay in situations long past their expiration date because leaving feels like admitting defeat? Or on the flip side, do you ghost people before they can ghost you? Do you keep everyone at arm's length? Do you sabotage relationships the moment they start feeling real? Awareness is the first step. You can't change what you can't see. Second, understand your attachment style. If you've been silently abandoned, you likely have either anxious attachment, you became hypervigilant about abandonment, constantly seeking reassurance, afraid to be alone. Avoidant attachment, you shut down emotionally, convinced that needing people makes you vulnerable, so you need no one. Disorganized attachment, you want connection but fear it simultaneously, creating a push-pull dynamic that confuses everyone, including you. None of these are permanent. Attachment styles can heal. But you have to know which one you're working with. Research attachment theory, if you haven't already. Read about how your childhood shaped your current relationship patterns. Not to blame your parents, but to understand your wiring so you can rewire it. Third, choose differently. This is the hardest part. When you're attracted to someone, pause and ask, am I attracted to them because they're good for me, or because they're familiar? Familiar feels like chemistry. Familiar feels like meant to be. But familiar often just means matches my trauma pattern. Real compatibility feels different. It feels calmer, less dramatic, more stable. And if you're used to chaos, stability might feel boring at first. Your trauma brain will tell you that if there's no anxiety, there's no passion. That if you're not worried about them leaving, you must not really care. That's a lie. That's your abandonment wound talking. Healthy love doesn't feel like a constant emergency. It feels like safety. And if safety feels wrong to you, that's a sign of how deep the damage goes, and how badly you need to heal it. Fourth, develop a secure relationship with solitude. People who fear abandonment often jump from relationship to relationship because being alone feels like death. If you can't sit with yourself, you'll accept anyone who's willing to sit with you. But here's the truth, the relationship you have with yourself sets the standard for every other relationship in your life. If you abandon yourself, ignoring your needs, betraying your boundaries, silencing your intuition, why would you expect others not to do the same? Learn to be alone without being lonely. Learn to enjoy your own company. Learn that your worth isn't determined by who chooses to stay. This isn't about becoming a lone wolf who needs no one. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need someone to feel complete. There's a difference between wanting connection and requiring it to survive. When you're secure in yourself, you stop accepting breadcrumbs. You stop making excuses for people who treat you poorly. You stop waiting for closure from people who aren't capable of giving it. You become the kind of person who, when someone goes silent, thinks, that's unfortunate for them, instead of, what did I do wrong? Fifth, set your non-negotiables. After being abandoned, you need to decide, what will you never tolerate again? Write them down. Not just, won't ghost me, but deeper things. Consistent communication. Emotional availability. Willingness to work through conflict instead of running. Respect for your feelings even during disagreements. Actions that match words. And here's the crucial part, stick to them. Even when you like someone. Even when you're lonely. Even when your trauma brain says, maybe this is as good as it gets. Your non-negotiables aren't about being picky or unrealistic. They're about respecting yourself enough to know what you need to feel safe in a relationship. And if someone can't meet those needs, that's information. Not about your worth, but about their capacity. And capacity isn't something you can create for another person. Sixth, forgive yourself. You're going to make mistakes as you heal. You're going to check their social media even though you promised you wouldn't. You're going to date someone who reminds you of them. You're going to have moments where you backslide into old patterns. Don't weaponize those moments against yourself. Healing isn't linear. You're learning a new operating system for relationships, and that takes time and error. What matters isn't perfection, it's direction. Are you generally moving toward health, even if you stumble backward sometimes? Then you're doing it right. Be patient with yourself. You're healing from something that has no instruction manual. You're doing the best you can with a wound that keeps trying to reopen. That's not weakness. That's being human while actively trying to be better. Let's get really dark for a moment. Because there's a truth about human nature that the abandonment forced you to see, and now you can't unsee it. People are capable of caring about you deeply one day and forgetting you exist the next. Love, connection, intimacy, none of it guarantees permanence. None of it protects you from being left. You can do everything right and still be abandoned. You can be perfect and still be discarded. This is the existential terror that abandonment reveals. You have no control over whether people stay. And once you've seen that truth, once you've lived through someone you trusted just opting out of your life, innocence is gone. You can't unlearn that people are capable of that level of disconnection. This is why abandonment trauma runs so deep. It's not just about losing one person. It's about losing your fundamental belief in the reliability of human connection. You used to believe that if you were good enough, kind enough, loving enough, people would stay. Now you know that's not true. Now you know that sometimes people leave for reasons that have nothing to do with you and everything to do with their own emotional limitations. And that knowledge? It's both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it means you're never truly safe from being left. No matter how much someone loves you today, they could change their mind tomorrow. That's terrifying. But liberating because it means you can stop trying to be perfect. If people can leave even when you've done everything right, then you might as well just be yourself. There's no magic formula for making people stay. They stay because they choose to. Not because you earned it. Not because you were flawless. Because they're committed to working through the hard stuff instead of running from it. And that's not something you can control. That's about their character, not your performance. So here's what you do with that dark knowledge. You accept it. You accept that people are beautifully flawed, capable of profound connection and profound disconnection, sometimes within the same person. You stop looking for guarantees. There are none. You could marry someone and they could still leave. You could be best friends for decades and they could ghost you over one disagreement. That's the gamble of being human. We're all walking around with the power to hurt each other, and sometimes people use that power, intentionally or not. But you also accept this: just because people can leave doesn't mean they will. Just because you've been abandoned doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you encountered someone who was incapable of healthy attachment. There are people who don't abandon. People who communicate even when it's hard. People who stay and work through conflict instead of disappearing. People who value you enough to be honest even when honesty is uncomfortable. Those people exist. You just have to develop the discernment to recognize them, and the self-worth to accept nothing less. The abandonment wasn't about you being inadequate. It was about them being incapable. And once you really internalize that, everything changes. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who already decided you're disposable. You stop accepting crumbs from people who can't offer a full meal. You stop waiting for unavailable people to become available. You start choosing people who choose you. Consistently. Clearly. Without you having to convince them of your value. Listen. If you're still here, still reading, you've been through it. I know that. You wouldn't have stuck with a 30+ minute deep dive into abandonment psychology unless it hit something raw in you. So let me tell you something directly, you are not broken because someone broke your trust. You are not unlovable because someone failed to love you properly. You are not forgettable just because someone chose to forget you. Their inability to see your worth doesn't diminish your worth. Their choice to leave doesn't mean you're the kind of person people leave. It means you encountered a person who leaves. That's about them. I know your trauma brain doesn't believe that. I know you've spent countless hours trying to figure out what you could have done differently. Analyzing your last conversations. Replaying moments. Searching for the fatal flaw that made you abandonable. But what if there isn't one? What if you're looking for a logical explanation to an emotional decision that had no logic behind it? What if they left simply because they're the kind of person who leaves when things get uncomfortable? And what if accepting that, really accepting that, is what finally sets you free? Here's what I want you to take from this. Silent abandonment is one of the most painful experiences a human can go through. It violates fundamental psychological needs, for closure, for understanding, for being treated with dignity. The people who do this aren't necessarily evil. They're emotionally immature, conflict avoidant, incapable of sitting with discomfort. They're wounded people who wound others because they never learned how to handle their own pain. Understanding that doesn't erase what they did. It doesn't make it okay. But it takes the weight of responsibility off you and puts it where it belongs, on them. Your healing doesn't depend on them coming back. It doesn't depend on getting an apology or an explanation. It depends on you deciding that you've given them enough of your time, enough of your energy, enough of your peace. It depends on you closing a door they left open and choosing to walk through a different one that leads to people who know how to stay, who know how to communicate, who know that other people's feelings matter. You've been through something that changes you. That's real. You can't go back to who you were before the abandonment. That version of you trusted too easily, maybe. Believed too quickly. Gave too much to people who didn't deserve it. But you can become someone stronger. Someone with better boundaries. Someone who doesn't need closure from others because you've learned to give it to yourself. Someone who knows their worth isn't determined by who chooses to see it. The abandonment happened. You can't change that. But you get to decide what you do with it. You can let it make you bitter, closed off, unable to trust anyone ever again. That's one option. And honestly, no one would blame you. Or you can let it make you wiser. More discerning. More protective of your energy. More aware of red flags. More committed to choosing people who choose you. You can use the darkness to see more clearly. To understand human psychology at a deeper level. To recognize patterns. To protect yourself and others from people who weaponize silence. That's the choice in front of you. Not whether to hurt, you're already hurting. But whether that hurt becomes poison or medicine. And deep down, you know which one you need to choose. If someone left your life without a word, I'm sorry. You deserved better. You deserved communication, honesty, closure. You deserve to be treated like a human being whose feelings matter. You didn't get that. And that's not fair. But you're still here. Still reading. Still trying to understand. Still moving toward healing even when it feels impossible. That's strength. Dark, painful, hard-won strength. But strength nonetheless. You're going to be okay. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, you'll wake up and realize you went a whole day without thinking about them. Then a week. Then longer. And one day, someone will ask about them, and you'll feel nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just the vague memory of someone who used to matter. That day is coming. Keep moving toward it.